So Rishi and Keir had their first face-off on the TV. I was there with my lightning jacks and a big old cushion to hide behind in case it got too much. There were heated exchanges over tax, NHS and immigration. The Tory and Labour leaders got scrappy at times, forcing the host of the event to intervene and urge the pair to lower your voices. And both leaders used the opportunity to set out their personal stories to voters, talking about how their childhood experiences had shaped their political views. Joining us now to discuss this is former government advisor James Price and former Labour advisor Patrick Diamond. Welcome to you both. James, first of all, I mean, unless I missed it, did Rishi Sunak refer to the fact that he was the son of a pharmacist at any point, or did he swerve that one this time?
I see, like me, you've been playing debate bingo.
Oh,
I think we
you
definitely
have to.
got that Keir Starmer was son of a toolmaker. I think that's one of the greatest hits that he's got. This is the way that these guys get endlessly coached in these things, because the risk of making a mistake is I think in most cases worse than the idea of getting in a killer blow. But I think that said, the kind of this £2,000 number that has been floating around, I think is going to be one of those things where if the Tories can land that blow, that's really going to hit. And if Labour can kind of try and unwind a little bit, it's going to end up with egg on faces. I mean, it is, as the Prime Minister says, it is in Labour's DNA to raise taxes. So I think that's one that's definitely going to stick with people. And the rest of it just seemed a little bit unedifying, because it is a bit of a sticky wicket that the Tories that we've got after 14 years. Lots of successes, but lots of things that haven't been done that should have been.
It's interesting, Patrick, on that point of the £2,000, obviously, you know, we've now seen this letter from the civil service saying, actually, this isn't our workings out. Why did Mr. Starmer not have that available to him yesterday? Because that would have been the stick of dynamite he needed.
Well, we don't know he didn't have it available. I mean, it's possible that he did know about the letter, but that, in a sense, there was an exercise here to expose Mr. Sunak, because he's been forced into making a claim which it's now shown is false, and the civil service does not support the underlying analysis. I think it is true, as was just said, that in the past election campaigns, the Conservatives have used very successfully against Labour the charge that Labour will raise your taxes. There's no doubt, you know, you look on past elections like 1992, very effective tax attacks. I think the issue for the Conservatives this time around is that, as many of your viewers and listeners will know, the Conservatives have raised taxes 26 times since 2010. So it's harder to lay that charge on Labour.
Yeah, it's a fair point, James Price, isn't it? That, I mean, 70-year high tax burden. It's a bit of a tricky one for Sunak to start talking about the party of raising taxes when his own government, whether he was at the helm or not, have been responsible for the biggest tax hike we've ever seen.
Yeah, this is the difficulty. I mean, I think on the specific numbers, I would trust Rishi Sunak over almost anybody in the world with a spreadsheet. And for whatever some of his other lesser strengths in leadership, you know, he's incredible with the numbers and inside the Treasury. So I think that number is going to be proven to be...
But what's he going to do about that number? Because now the civil service has said, well, hang on, look, you know, we can give so much advice. We're not political. We didn't come up with that figure. They've said that. The Permanent Secretary has been quite unequivocal about that. So how is he going to... Because it will come up at the next debate. Look, here's the letter. Where did you get these numbers from?
Yeah, and I think the Conservatives, and I certainly will as well, be very happy to have a debate about just how much Labour are planning to put up taxes.
Well, they're not putting it up at all, are they? There's going to be no rise in income tax, no rise in national insurance, and other than the school thing, no rise in VAT.
And that's one of many, many taxes that we've got, which means that they're going to be squeezed up in all sorts of other areas. And the problem we've got, and this is a problem with Treasury analysis. I mean, I used to be the special advisor in the Treasury, that it only looks at these things in a very static ways. And not to get too wonky about this, but you say, well, you put taxes up by this much, you bring in this much money. But it then doesn't look at all the other dynamic effects of people going, well, I'm not going to go and put my money in the UK. I'm not going to bother to invest in that. And all the other jobs that then don't get created, the kind of infrastructure that doesn't get created, and all these problems. So if you're saying I'm not going to put up income tax, good. We should never be putting up any more taxes than they are. But you start putting up taxes in other areas, as Labour are going to have to do, like this thing with VAT on school fees as well, that's going to be damaging for the rest of the state sector. Then these are the other kind of knock-on effects that are going to be really, really negative for the country.
Patrick, let's go away from taxes. How did your man do then last night, do you think, on balance? I mean, my own analysis, for what it's worth, was that I thought this was very kind of evenly matched, and looking at most of the pundits out there today, pretty much concurring with that. Some saying it was 51-49 to Sunak, others say it was 51-49 to Starmer. There was no huge Real Madrid moment here.
Yeah, look, let's try and be balanced and step back from the sort of partisan knockabout and look objectively on how the debate played out. I think both leaders exposed their strengths and weaknesses. I think Rishi Sunak came into it really needing a win. He needed to make a big impact given where his party is in the polls. And I think he was aggressive, combative. At times that might have risked backfiring on him, but he did have some successes in landing blows on Starmer. On the other hand, I think Starmer was very good at connecting with the audience, good at showing empathy with the questions that were asked by some of the guests in the studio, and I think was good on public services and on some of the areas like defence and security, where perhaps Labour hasn't traditionally been as strong in the past. But I don't think this debate will fundamentally change the dynamic of the election, because, as you rightly said, the impression that one got is that it was a relatively balanced, even contest.
Yeah, James, would you concur with that? There was no kind of standout winner. There were very few standout moments, frankly, but on balance, do you think it was reasonable objectively to suggest it was a bit 50-50 and quite vanilla overall?
Yeah, and I think that was a very characteristically fair and even analysis that almost tempts me to want to be very non-partisan as well, and try not to twist the knife. But I do think that people did get a measure of people. That Sunak is not going to set the world on fire, but has now been inside government for a long time and understands just how difficult it is to try and get anything done. Yeah. And I do think that for a lot of these Labour guys, should they end up in government, it's going to be a long, steep learning curve, because and the last time since Labour have been in, the state has grown enormously. It's something I'm very unhappy with. The size of the civil service has grown enormously. Yep. It's that much more difficult to get anything done at all. And the kind of scale of reforms that are going to be needed to turn this country around are not anything that we're hearing from Labour at the moment, because they are so worried about making a mistake. Now, I get that totally electorally, but I think everybody watching knows that this country needs some pretty big, drastic reforms to happen. Lowercase r, I should say, and reforms there in order to right this sort of ship. And I don't think we've seen any of that from the party that looks like it might be about to win.
And just a final point to both of you then, Patrick, firstly, when we look at Mr. Starmer, what would you say if you were explaining or selling the great points of Keir Starmer to the world? I think both of these guys, by the way, put their politics aside. If I lived next door to either one of them, I think I could trust them to leave my back door open, put my bins out when I was on holiday, and not sleep with my eldest daughter. I think these are guys that are probably quite trustworthy human beings in that respect. But as politicians, why is Keir Starmer the right man to run this country, Patrick Diamond?
I think that from Starmer's perspective, he would say that his life work has been about public service. It's been about trying to deliver good public policies that will help the majority of people. I don't think he's going to try to be the most charismatic leader. That isn't obviously playing to Starmer's strengths. I think he's going to argue that after years of what's felt like instability and at times chaos, he offers stability, continuity and competence, and that is what the country needs at this time. It doesn't need grand visions and grandiose policies. What it needs is stable, sensible leadership, and he has the experience to deliver that.
And same question, James Price. Rishi Sunak, I know he's not necessarily your ideal leader of the party, but why is he the bloke that should still run the United Kingdom?
No, I think that in other circumstances, he would be absolutely fantastic. And he inherited, obviously, a very sticky wicket. And I think the guy's vision for what this country could do if it were unshackled from some of the problems that we've got, things like embracing artificial intelligence and all these really amazing technologies that we could use to replace the kind of low-skilled, high immigration with exciting robots and all that kind of stuff. And these are the kind of things that Sunak, if he had a mandate, could go on and do. And he didn't spend his career, backing people like Abu Qatada, as was mentioned last night, and a lot of other people that Keir Starmer spent a career defending.
There it is. James, thank you very much for your time. Patrick too. Patrick Diamond and James Price with us here on Talk.